Did you ever become informed of what the process is for a student to be evaluated for special services?
Generally.
Okay. Who instructed you on that?
Well, I spoke with Dr. Clifford, read manuals regarding the process, the steps, and subsequently during interviews with or SAO statements with people.
Do you know what people you spoke to?
Well, there's a whole variety. Everyone that I spoke to is logged in there regarding that.
Which manuals did you read?
Well, there's an SST manual, Student Study Team, I believe is what the acronym's for, manual. There's a couple of them that refer to that, and I looked at those, spoke with mainly Dr. Clifford to go through the process that a student goes through for ESE.
In instructing yourself about the process, did you find any documents that specified time periods that this evaluation required?
There were time periods regarding, and I won't be able to quote this exactly, a 10-day period in which you have to respond, I guess, to a request for an IEP. But that was the only time frame. Other than, I think the school implemented 60 days as a time frame to do an evaluation.
Now, that 10-day period that you mentioned, was that an outside limit type of time frame?
I'd have to go back over that to answer that specific question about the 10 days.
Okay, well, you said it was a 10-day period within which to respond.
Yeah, that was trying to be honest here about, there's a limit. I don't recall exactly what it was about as I speak to you. So I can't really elaborate too much on the 10-day limit or the 60-day limit that I mentioned.
So sitting here today, you don't know if what the limit was is that you had to wait 10 days before something could occur?
Objective form.
I'm not clear on that at this time.
Okay. Did, when you were instructing yourself in this process, did you come across any requirement that prohibited a short period of time within which to evaluate a child?
No written requirement.
Did you investigate whether there were instances where the district encouraged very prompt evaluations to meet goals of the district?
Yeah, to answer that, I'm going to qualify what we're comparing this against, obviously, which was done basically in one day, majority of it, which is not common.
Okay.
It's very uncommon.
Okay. How did you determine that it was not common?
From every person involved in, that I spoke with in the ESE process there.
So what you got from them was feelings that it was not common?
Well, one day, no.
Okay.
If you look at the process, it speaks for itself.
Did you investigate the veracity of those feelings by looking at actual district records of evaluations?
Basically, in the records, I looked at how many were ever done in one day. And there were occasions where there were one day. That's what I was told.
Okay, so you didn't really review the records. Somebody told you about this.
Well, people that are involved in that process and do numerous of them, yes.
Okay, so back to my question.
Yes.
You didn't personally review the records?
I didn't go over IEPs of other students and how long that took. No, I did not.
Okay, so you basically relied on the opinion that was given to you by people in the district. Is that fair?
Testimony under oath, yes.
Okay. Now, who gave testimony under oath that that process was not common?
Alicia Rabinowitz says it normally takes probably 6 months. Howard Rosen. No, Howard Rosen's not that. That's the prosecutor, but Rosen.
I didn't know it was
psychological. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Mr. Rosen went to school.
My error. Mr. Rosen, the psychologist. I don't remember exactly whether Lisa Parker indicated that or not. She says, oh, well, there have been occasions when, but they're not many. You know, it's unusual, and that's basically highly unusual that I got from most of the statements. Clifford, Dr. Clifford, also said that's highly unusual.
Okay. Did they tell you how many children had actually been completed in one day?
No.
Did they indicate to you if they even knew how many?
They knew of occasions, as I said, emergency intakes, where they either had an IEP. It didn't fit this initial IEP process.
Did anybody speak to you about special requests that the district received for individual children?
What do you mean by special request?
Well, if somebody requested a one-day process, were you aware of that?
No.
Did you ever speak to Mr. Vidal?
Objective form.
Yes.
And did he explain to you that he received special requests?
No. He knew nothing about anything.
Were you aware that the district receives special funding when a child is evaluated and deemed to be in need of services?
That's what I understand to be the case.
Okay. Did anybody talk to you about special incentives that the school board had put in place to encourage children to be evaluated and where appropriate to be put in these special programs?
Objective form.
No programs.
None of the people that you spoke to indicated to you that the district had special goals that they had sent out to speed up the evaluation process?
Objective form.
I'm not aware of that. When I first started, this was the beginning of the investigation.
So is
And he was a school psychologist who should have been assigned to, according, to the process, allegedly. So I asked that question of him. He said, the McKay, no, it was out there, that probably I could ask 6 different psychologists and I might get 4 different answers or more.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
So I did not make a point of saying whether they were eligible or not eligible according to them. And I didn't put it in the report.
Okay, as was it. You didn't include that statement in your report?
No, I don't see it in.
And you didn't include it in any subsequent statement?
That's correct. No, all he did is review the documentation.
And he wasn't present at the IEP meeting, correct?
That's correct.
He didn't prepare any reports, correct?
That's correct.
And the extent of Mr. Finkelstein's knowledge of anything relating to or her disability is reviewing a report that you handed him, correct?
That's correct. In the process, if you had an outside psychologist do this, you would have an in-house person review the psychological just like he read. Okay? And he would have reviewed it.
Now, in fact, sir, the process, the review process, does not require the reviewing psychologist to issue an opinion as to the contents of the report, correct? The review process that is required is for the reviewing psychologist to certify that the person that provided or produced the report is qualified to do so. Is that not true?
That's one thing. That's one item, but I also believe they checked the tests that were, the names and the types of tests that were given by the psychologist as well.
Well, sir, the report does not include the tests, does it?
The psychological does.
It doesn't include the actual tests.
It doesn't, not the results. It says what they gave,
Okay.
what type of test they gave.
So how would a reviewing psychologist, just by knowing the type of tests that were given, be able to ascertain a person's condition?
Objection to form. You're now asking him how a psychologist would know something. We've gotten pretty far afield. Now let me ask this. Would this be a good time for everybody to take our afternoon?
Back on the record.
So that we move on from this, and I'm clear. At no time did you obtain an opinion from a psychologist that said that the children did not qualify for McKay, correct?
That's correct.
Do you know the difference between a private McKay and a public McKay?
I would have to have more of an explanation of that. When you're talking about private psychologists or public psychologists?
No, sir, I'm talking about the scholarships.
No.
Do you know that there's different types of McKay scholarships? Did anybody explain to you the difference between a public McKay scholarship and a private McKay scholarship?
Object to form.
If you know.
No.
Do you know whether in any of these things that you printed out, there was a distinction made between a public school McKay and a private school McKay?
No.
Okay, I'm going to give you back this document, and I'm going to
Okay.
ask you to look at page 1 of 6,
Okay.
and ask if you see there where it talks about a public school option as opposed to a private school option.
If you get a McKay, you can use it for public school. You can even change public schools to have your child go to another school, or you can use the McKay money to pay tuition to a private school.
So the intent that you file for McKay can be used to move a child from one public school to another public school, correct?
That's correct.
Not necessarily from a public school to a private school, correct?
That's correct.
So a parent filing an intent is not necessarily seeking monies to pay a private school tuition.
I don't know.
Well, if you want to look at the document that's in front of you, see if you
All right.
can,
Where do you look at?
over here where it says option, private school option, public school option, what does it say? No, it's right on the page. That's something you printed out, right?
Yes.
And you reviewed. Is there an indication when that option is exercised?
Okay.
When is that option exercised? Well, when do you choose the option in relationship to the intent?
All it says is you file the intent prior to withdrawing from public school.
Okay. You filed the intent, sir, prior to deciding whether your child is going to public or private options, correct?
Yeah, imagine you can. It depends on what the person's thinking.
Well, sir, my question is whether the requirements of that regulation that's in front of you
Okay.
requires an intent to be filed prior to making the choice of option. Mr. Ivy, the intent that was filed did not specifically address the private school option, did it?
Well, I have no knowledge of that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Is it not true that when an intent is filed, it must be done prior to choosing the public school or the private school options?
Yes,
Does that
this
seem-
says after filing intent, it's the title.
Yes.
The parents choosing the public school could do this, parents choosing the private school could do this.
Okay. When the intent was filed by Mrs., and you have a copy of that intent,
Okay.
there was no indication regarding whether it was going to be a private school option or a public school option, correct?
Well, the intent, I can't tell from the intent.
Because there is no indication of the intent, correct?
That's correct.
It's after the intent is filed and the McKay approved that the parent chooses which option, correct?
Okay.
After the intent is filed, the next step, after it's filed and approved, is when you choose the options, right?
That's when you tell them yes.
Okay.